Imagine you just bought your dream apartment. You saved for 10 years. You put down 30%, your life savings. You start paying the mortgage, $2,000 a month, every month, for 3 years. Then one day you drive to see how construction is going, and you find nothing. Empty concrete shells, rusty cranes, scattered debris. The developer is gone, the money is gone, but your mortgage, that's still very much there. Welcome to China's real estate apocalypse, where 65 to 80 million apartments sit empty, enough to house the entire population of Germany twice, while millions of families pay mortgages on homes that will never be finished. This is the story of how the world's biggest construction boom became the world's biggest financial nightmare, how $60 trillion in real estate wealth is evaporating, and how entire cities, complete with skyscrapers, shopping malls, and subway systems, stand empty like movie sets where the actors never showed up. Buckle up. This is the most expensive real estate disaster in human history, and it's not over yet. 1. The ghost cities. When you build it, but nobody comes. Let's start with something surreal. Drive 3 hours southwest from Beijing and you'll find Kangbashi district in Ordos, Inner Mongolia. This place looks like a sci-fi movie set. Massive government buildings, modern museums, shopping malls, parks with manicured lawns, high-rise apartments that go on for miles. It was built to house 300,000 people. The buildings are there. The infrastructure is there. The only thing missing, the people. For years, only about 2,000 people lived there. That's less than 1% occupancy. The place was so empty, so eerie that photographers came from around the world to document it. They called it a failed utopia, a post-apocalyptic world. But Kangbashi isn't alone. Not even close. Thamstown near Shanghai, a perfect replica of an English village, red telephone boxes, Gothic churches, Tudor homes, statues of Winston Churchill and Shakespeare, cobblestone streets. It cost over $700 million to build, designed for 10,000 residents. Actual population, fewer than 2,500. The main economic activity? Wedding photography. Couples come for a few hours to take exotic photos, then leave. That's it. Tianducheng, the Paris of the East, a full replica of Paris, complete with a 354-foot Eiffel Tower, Parisian boulevards, and Haussmannian architecture. Built in 2007 for 10,000 residents. By 2013, only 2,000 people lived there. Yujiapu Financial District in Tianjin, designed to be China's Manhattan. Gleaming office towers, wide boulevards, its own subway station. Cost? Tens of billions. Result? Still eerily vacant more than a decade later. The numbers are staggering. China has 65 to 80 million vacant homes. That's not a typo. 65 to 80 million. Empty apartments just sitting there. He Kang, former deputy head of China's National Bureau of Statistics, said it best. The current number of vacant homes are enough for 3 billion people. That estimate might be a bit much, but 1.4 billion people probably can't fill them. Think about that. China has 1.4 billion people, and they've built so much housing that even their massive population can't fill it. It's like cooking dinner for 10 people when you only invited 3. 2. The 300 billion collapse, when giants fall. So how did we get here? Let's talk about Evergrande. China Evergrande Group wasn't just big, it was massive. At its peak, over $300 billion in debt. Yes, billion with a B. Developing 1,300+ projects across 300 cities. One of China's top Fortune 500 companies, 123,000 employees. The business model was simple, but insane. Build, borrow, repeat. Here's how it worked. Evergrande would buy land from local governments, pre-sell apartments that hadn't been built yet, sometimes hadn't even broken ground. Use that money to buy more land and start new projects. Borrow massive amounts to keep the cycle going. Repeat. It's like a Ponzi scheme, but with concrete. In China, 85% of all homes are sold this way, before they're built. You pay a huge down payment, usually 30% of the price, start paying your mortgage and hope the developer actually finishes the building. For years it worked. Prices kept going up. Developers kept building. Everyone made money. Then in 2021, it all came crashing down. September 2021, Evergrande defaults on its debt. 2023, the company reports a loss of $81 billion, not million, billion, one of the largest corporate losses in history. January 2024, a Hong Kong court orders Evergrande to be liquidated. game over. But Evergrande was just the beginning. Country Garden, once China's largest private developer, supposed to be the stable one, the one that wasn't as reckless as Evergrande. 2023 reports a loss of $27.5 billion. 2024 defaults on debt, faces liquidation proceedings, has $187 billion in liabilities. In Thailand alone, Country Garden built capacity for 130,000 apartments. Only 9,000 residents moved in. The rest, empty. Vanka, a government-connected developer, one of the high-quality ones that was supposed to be safe. 2024 reports a record loss of $6.8 billion. January 2025, CEO detained. Company faces potential government takeover. The dominoes are falling, and they're huge dominoes. 3. The mortgage hostage crisis, when you pay for nothing. Now let's talk about the people, the families, the real victims of this disaster. Meet the homebuyers of Jingdezhen, a city in southeast China. In 2019, they bought apartments in Evergrande's Dynasty Mansion development. Beautiful brochures, exciting promises. Move-in date, 2021. 2021 arrives, no building, just an empty lot. 2022, still nothing. The developer has stopped construction, but the mortgages, those keep coming. $2,000 a month, every month. So in July 2022, these buyers did something radical. They wrote a public letter and posted it on social media. We will stop paying our mortgages unless construction resumes by October 20th, 2022. The letter went viral. Within weeks, homebuyers in 100-plus cities across 18 provinces joined the boycott. Over 300 unfinished projects, tens of thousands of families, all refusing to pay mortgages on homes that don't exist. The threatened amount? Up to $296 billion in mortgage loans. Let that sink in. People are paying mortgages on buildings that are literally just concrete shells. Some don't even have windows or doors. Some were never even started. Ji Zhang, a retiree in Nanjing, waited 5 years for her apartment. 5 years of mortgage payments, 5 years of hope. Then she gave up waiting. She and her neighbors moved into the unfinished buildings anyway. No running water, no electricity, no heating. No doors in some units, just raw concrete. We moved into empty shells, she told reporters, but we figured that if we help each other as a community, we can do it. This is dystopian. This is people living in construction sites because they've paid so much money, they have nowhere else to go. And the government response? Threats. Banks calling them. Credit scores destroyed. Some put on social credit blacklists. Can't buy luxury goods, can't fly, can't even ride high-speed trains. But they keep striking. Because what choice do they have? Suspending mortgage payments is a gamble, said one 27-year-old striker named Quang Hong. There is no way out. We've been driven to despair. 4. The Ponzi scheme. How it all worked until it didn't. Okay, step back. How did an entire country end up in this mess? It starts with a simple fact. In China, 70% of household wealth is in real estate. Not stocks, not bonds, not savings accounts. Real estate. Why? Because for decades, there weren't many other options. The stock market was volatile and risky. Savings accounts paid almost nothing. Capital controls made it hard to invest abroad. But real estate? Prices only went up. Always. So families didn't just buy one apartment. They bought 2, 3, 5. Not to live in, to hold like stocks. Add to this a cultural factor. In China, if you're a young man and want to get married, you need to own property. It's basically a requirement. The bride's family won't even consider you without it. China's one-child policy created a gender imbalance. 30 to 40 million more men than women. Millions of men who will never marry unless they can buy an apartment first. The demand was insane, and developers knew it. Local governments were in on it too. They sold land to developers for massive profits. In some cities, 40–50% of local government revenue came from land sales. So everyone had an incentive to keep building. Developers made money on every project. Local governments needed land sales for revenue. Banks made money on mortgages. Home buyers saw apartments as guaranteed investments. It was a perfect perpetual motion machine, as long as prices kept rising. But there's a problem with perpetual motion machines. They don't exist. 5. The trap snaps shut. When the music stops 2020, the Chinese government introduces the 3 red lines policy. This was supposed to be good. Limit excessive borrowing by developers, prevent a bubble, Smart economics. The three rules. Liability to asset ratio must be less than 70%. Net debt to equity ratio must be less than 100%. Cash to short-term debt ratio must be greater than 100%. Sounds reasonable, right? Except most major developers violated all three. Suddenly they couldn't borrow anymore. The money tap shut off. But remember, their business model relied on constantly borrowing to fund new projects while finishing old ones. Without new loans, the whole system seized up. Construction stopped. Projects were abandoned mid-build. Half-finished towers became known as rotten tail buildings. Then COVID hit. Lockdowns, economic slowdown. People lost jobs, incomes dropped. Demand for new apartments collapsed. Home buyers got scared. Why buy a pre-sale apartment when major developers are going bankrupt? Sales fell 59% year over year in spring 2022. Developers couldn't sell new apartments, couldn't borrow more money, couldn't finish old projects. The death spiral began, and here's the cruelest irony. China has a housing shortage and a housing surplus at the same time. In major cities like Beijing and Shanghai, young professionals spend 60–80% of their income on tiny rental apartments, often sharing single rooms. Meanwhile, luxury towers in those same cities stand completely empty. Why? Because the owners bought them as investments and won't rent them out. It would lower the property value, and won't sell them at current prices. They'd lock in a loss. People who need homes can't afford them. People who own homes won't use them. It's economic absurdity. 6. The 60 trillion question. What happens next? So where does that leave us? The scale, 65 to 80 million vacant homes, 13 million apartments with halted construction in 1 year alone, $60 trillion real estate market, yes, trillion, 25 to 30% of China's entire GDP tied to property, $220 billion in CNAC, mortgages on unfinished projects. The damage, Evergrande, $300 billion in debt, liquidated country garden, $187 billion in liabilities, defaulting Vanka, $44 billion owed, CEO detained. Dozens more developers in default, the human cost, families paying mortgages on homes that don't exist, life savings, evaporated retirement plans destroyed, middle-class wealth wiped out. What can be done? Goldman Sachs estimates it would cost about $98 billion to eliminate the completion risk for 1 year, basically to finish the projects that buyers have already paid for. That sounds like a lot. But in the context of a $60 trillion market and a government with deep pockets, it's actually manageable. The government has launched a $42 billion rescue plan to buy unsold homes and convert them into affordable housing. But experts say the real cost could be $500 billion to $1 trillion to fully address the crisis. The question isn't whether the government can fix this. The question is whether they will, and whether it's already too late to prevent broader economic damage. Some ghost cities are slowly filling up. Kangbashi now has about 100,000 people, still way below the 300,000 target. Zhengdong new area transformed from ghost city to thriving district with 1.3 million people by 2023. But those are exceptions. Most remain empty. Most projects remain unfinished. Most families remain stuck. 7. The global ripple effect. Why you should care. Okay, you might be thinking, but I don't live in China. Why should I care? Because when 30% of the world's second largest economy is in crisis, everyone feels it. 4. Global markets. Chinese construction consumed massive amounts of steel, copper, cement. Slowdown in China. Lower commodity prices. Pain for exporters. Australian iron ore. Brazilian copper. All affected for companies. Foreign companies invested billions in Chinese real estate and construction. Banks holding Chinese developer bonds are taking losses. PwC got fined $56 million and banned for 6 months for its role in auditing Evergrande. For the Chinese economy, consumer confidence shattered. People saving instead of spending. Household savings at record highs. Economic growth slowing. Youth, unemployment over 20%. For global growth, China's economy slowing. Less demand for global goods. Ripple effects through supply chains. Reduced global GDP growth. This isn't just a Chinese problem. This is a global problem. 8. The lessons. What the world should learn. China's ghost cities aren't just a spectacular failure. They're a warning. Lesson 1. Housing should be for living, not speculation. When housing becomes primarily an investment vehicle rather than shelter, you get distortions. Empty apartments while people go homeless. prices divorced from economic reality. Lesson 2, debt-fueled growth has limits. You can't borrow your way to prosperity forever. Eventually, the bills come due. Evergrande's $300 billion in debt seemed fine when prices were rising. It became a death sentence when they weren't. Lesson 3, pre-sale models are dangerous. Asking people to pay for something that doesn't exist yet creates massive risk. When it works, everyone's happy. When it fails, families are trapped paying for homes they'll never see. Lesson 4, local government incentives matter. When local governments rely on land sales for revenue, they have every incentive to keep the boom going, even when it's clearly unsustainable. Lesson 5, you can't build your way out of demography. China's population is aging and shrinking. The one-child policy created a demographic time bomb. You can't solve declining population with more apartments. Lesson 6, trust takes decades to build, seconds to destroy. Chinese homebuyers learned a brutal lesson. The system doesn't protect you. Presale contracts aren't guarantees. Developers can take your money and disappear. That trust won't come back easily. 9. The human story, beyond the numbers. Let's end where we started, with the people. There's a short documentary that follows 300 families who moved into their pre-purchased homes after 8 years of waiting, 8 years of mortgage payments on apartments that were never finished. They moved in anyway, into concrete shells, no windows, no electricity, no water, some without doors. They brought generators. They helped each other install makeshift plumbing. They formed a community in the ruins of their dreams. We moved into empty shells, but we figured that if we help each other as a community, we can do it. One resident said, "This is the human cost of $60 trillion in misallocated capital." Families like Ji Jiang, the retiree who saved her whole life for an apartment, only to move into an unfinished construction site at age 65. Young professionals like Kwang Hong, whose credit is destroyed, whose business dreams are crushed, but who keeps striking anyway because he has no other option. The couples who bought that Paris of the East apartment for their wedding, only to find themselves taking photos in front of an empty Eiffel Tower replica because the city never came to life. This isn't just about failed economic policy. It's about millions of people whose life savings, whose futures, whose dreams are locked inside these empty concrete towers. Final thoughts. The most expensive lesson. China's ghost cities stand as monuments to hubris, to the belief that you can engineer growth by simply building enough concrete, to the idea that prices only go up, to the assumption that demand will always catch up to supply. They didn't. 65 to 80 million empty homes. Cities built for millions, inhabited by hundreds. Couples paying mortgages on homes that exist only on paper. An entire generation's wealth locked in concrete prisons. The craziest part? Some of the ghost cities are filling up, very slowly, decades later, as if the builders were just early, too early, but most won't. Most will stand as ruins. Warnings. Evidence of the most expensive mistake in modern economic history. Germany spent $500 billion on an energy transition that failed. Turkey spent its future on ergonomics. China? China spent $60 trillion building cities for people who never came. The buildings are empty, but the lessons are full. Let's hope the rest of the world is paying attention.